This is where it all began. 2 years ago on Sony's E3 stage, Santa Monica's drastic reinvention of the God of War franchise was first revealed to the world. But with great hype come great expectations. When you reveal a game in the most epic way imaginable, you better be ready to deliver the goods. Since a little over 2 weeks, gamers all around the globe are finally able to experience this updated version of an iconic character firsthand. Being a fan of story-driven single-player games, my expectations for this game were beyond measure. God of War promised to be a much-needed evolution for a series which was about to sink into total insignificance. It promised to elevate a one-dimensional, stale character to a complex, three-dimensional human being. After having played God of War for 50 hours now, I'm happy to say the game succeeded in doing all of that, and even better, gave me more than I could have ever asked for. The fact that this reimagined version of God of War managed to impress both critics and fans is a miracle. Whenever an iconic franchise changes as drastically as God of War, the fanbase usually gets cut in two. The moment God of War's new vision was revealed to the public, just remember how many people rallied under the banner #NotMyGodOfWar. No more fixed camera angles, a Kratos who is trying to control his rage, no traditional hack and slash gameplay, a father-son story. How can this possibly be God of War? Despite all the skepticism and opposition, God of War won over almost everybody, resulting in a phenomenal Metacritic score. Uncharted 4 certainly changed things up, but it was nowhere near as different from its previous games as God of War. All the more surprising, God of War's user scores actually higher than Uncharted 4's. By now it has officially turned into the highest rated PS4 game and one of the highest rated games of the entire console generation. In just 3 days, the game sold over 3 million copies, even beating Uncharted 4 by a long shot. For comparison, Nathan Drake's Last Adventure sold 2.7 million units in 1 week. Sony Santa Monica achieved something incredible. People who were excited about the game had their expectations met, or even surpassed, and people who rejected the idea of a reimagined God of War seemingly changed their mind. My impressions are still fresh, and I'm not ruling out the possibility that my opinion could slightly change in the near future. But as it stands right now, I couldn't agree more with the universal praise. God of War is, hands down, one of the best games I've ever played, and easily one of the best games of this console generation. One should be careful with superlatives, but yes, God of War is a masterpiece. Allow me to explain in detail why this revamped version of God of War is such an achievement. During the course of this video, I'd like to take a brief look at all the aspects which make God of War into a triumph. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my love letter to God of War. Let me get the obvious out of the way. God of War is a feast for the eyes. Santa Monica has created the best looking PS4 game to date. At times it was inexplicable to me how a game this graphically stunning and polished can run so smoothly on a $400 box. I wasn't even playing on a PS4 Pro. I experienced the entire game on a standard PS4, yet I found myself constantly amazed by the visual splendor. Each time I entered a new environment or encountered beautiful vistas, I was mesmerized by the gorgeous synergy of art design and top-notch graphics. The universe of God of War feels real and cohesive. Traversing the world is like the ultimate road trip through the landmarks of Norse mythology. One gorgeous landscape chases the next. The passion for detail, regardless if we are talking about the environments, enemy design or character animations, is absolutely mind-boggling and can rival even Naughty Dog. You don't have to understand a whole lot about graphics to come to the conclusion that pretty much every aspect is near perfect. God of War features amazing lighting, an abundance of stunning particle effects, and excellent facial animations. But the true technical achievement lies in the game's one-take camera. From the beginning to the very last shot, the game never cuts, and the camera always hovers around our characters in one continuous motion. Uncharted 4 followed a similar approach. However, the idea to build an entire game around a single-take camera made for the most seamless and immersive game experience I've ever had. The camera is essential to the way the story is told. The game revolves around one single unbroken shot, supporting both quiet moments between Kratos and his son, as well as bombastic action sequences. It's a bold new concept which paid off brilliantly. It was the creator's intention to create deeper immersion in the story and to promote stronger empathy towards the characters by making the viewer feel like they are literally taking the journey with our hero. I have to say, this approach appears far more natural in the context of a game. At first, it sounded like a gimmick, but like everything else in God of War, it fulfills a deeper purpose and supports the goal of the story. It makes it hard not to connect to the struggles of the characters and become attached to them. Even more importantly, God of War never sacrifices gameplay for narrative. We all expected a more mature and complex narrative, but the storytelling in this game not only improved upon the standards the God of War series is known for, it is light years ahead of almost every game out there. Following the adventure of Kratos and boy, was a journey I'll never forget. The last time I was that engrossed in a story and had such an intimate bond with two characters has to be The Last of Us. Which is funny because many people were accusing the game of being a direct copy of The Last of Us parent-child relationship. There are certain similarities, but believe me when I say, especially gameplay-wise, it doesn't feel like The Last of Us at all. This game isn't an escort mission. It's a journey that explores themes like grief, the responsibility of being a god, and the acceptance of past mistakes. It's so refreshing to play a game full of action-packed set pieces and massive boss fights whose end goal seems small and insignificant in comparison, yet to the characters it means the world. The major task of the game is to take Faye's ashes to the highest peak, and this never changes. All the spectacle is simply in our way. In the end, it is all about a father and his son saying their goodbyes to the one person who will always be a part of them.
Goodbye, Faye.
I love you, Mom.
The entire story led to this quiet moment between father and son. Who would have thought that God of War of all games could end on such an emotional and intimate note? It reminded me of Red Dead Redemption. Here too, Marston's motivation becomes the player's motivation. Return to your wife and child at all cost. Characters you don't see until the end of the game influence the story. I would go as far to say, Faye is one of the best video game characters, for the sole reason that they managed to make her into a major driving force behind the entire story, and in a way, she controls the actions of our protagonists. You care deeply for a character you never even saw. We don't know what she looks like. We never even hear her voice. Yet you can feel her presence every step of the way. Just like Atreus and Kratos do, Faye's spirit levitates above the entire journey. A character we never even see shapes the narrative and becomes the ultimate motivation. Finding out that she orchestrated all of this and brought Atreus and Kratos together beyond her death, that she embarked on the same journey and marked their path, makes it even more powerful. She was there all along, not physically, but in the hearts and minds of the protagonists and, more importantly, the player. Another fascinating part about God of War's story is the lack of a clear villain. Unlike the old God of War titles, this game doesn't need a final villain. That's not what the story is about. Baldur remains the greatest obstacle, but it's not like he's some sort of power-hungry antagonist who seeks to destroy Kratos for personal gain. Once his full story is revealed, you begin to realize Baldur is a truly tragic character, the love of his own mother, trapped in an endless cycle of suffering. His inability to die and feel tortures him for ages. You are not on his side, but you understand where he's coming from.
This path you walk, vengeance, you will find no peace. I know.
Snapping his neck seemed necessary, but at no point did it feel satisfying. I could analyze the story and characters forever. There's just so much detail and complexity involved. Astonishingly, the emotional high points in the story are often communicated very implicitly. Almost nothing is explicitly stated, which fits Kratos as a character. He isn't a man of many words. So instead of handing him extensive lines of dialogue, the game is saying so much and crafting moments full of emotion, using nothing but body language or reoccurring musical cues. And that is simply mind-boggling, given the fact that God of War used to stand for this. Even things which seem like gimmicks or running gags have profound meaning and significance in the end. Kratos calling his own son boy.
Boy! Boy, watch your tone, boy.
Has turned into an instant meme. However, even that has a payoff. When Kratos finally discovers his loving side and exposes his true feelings, him calling Atreus son at the very end becomes so much more meaningful.
Father.
No. We do it together. Son.
Despite being a radical reimagination in terms of gameplay and storytelling approach, we are still dealing with the same Kratos. It's not a pure reboot, it is a continuation of Kratos' character. In some way, shape or form, the game had to address the legacy left behind by the previous titles. I can imagine so many ways to either completely ignore the legacy of God of War or turn it into shallow Easter eggs without substance. Fortunately, the past is not diminished or glossed over. It resides at the very core of the story and drives the dramatic character development of Kratos. Kratos must accept the man he once was in order to become someone better and prevent his son from making the same mistakes. He wants to end the cycle of violence and revenge started by himself so many years ago. As different as God of War has become, the game never forgets where it comes from and treats the past with respect. God of War is a near perfect game. But there's one moment which elevated the entire game from a very good one to a masterpiece. You all know what I'm talking about, the return of the blades. This moment is so well crafted and important on so many levels that I decided to make a video just for this scene. So look forward to that in the coming days.
Boy. Listen close. I'm from a land called Sparta. I made a deal with the god that cost me my soul. I killed many who were deserving. And many who were not. I killed my father.
Understandably, many gamers were concerned that God of War's focus on Atreus as a character would transform the game into an annoying escort mission. As it turns out, our concerns were unfounded. Not only isn't the game an escort mission, Atreus is one of the best sidekicks in video game history. He doesn't feel like tedious busy work. On the contrary, he is a vital gameplay mechanic and of utmost importance for the entire story. There are certain enemies and puzzles you can only overcome with his help. Atreus is a valuable combat partner and useful travel companion who helps the player and Kratos to unravel the mystery of this world. Instead of comparing him to Ellie from The Last of Us, it makes far more sense to compare him to a supporting character in Mass Effect or Dragon Age. He is a part of your team. Whenever you progress, he makes progress as well. At first I was hesitant to spend my hardly earned experience points or Hacksilver on his equipment. But once I realized how helpful he actually is, his skill tree was the first I leveled up to completion. I don't know how many times I was on the verge of death when Atreus saved my life by distracting an enemy, grabbing onto him or finding me a much needed healing stone. He isn't an annoyance, he is a fantastic character, and without him, this journey wouldn't be the same. There is a term used to describe the physical sensation one experiences when interacting with a certain gameplay mechanic, called game feel. It's mostly a subconscious feeling, resulting from a combination of visual feedback, sounds and instant response to a gameplay action. How often have you said something along the lines of, "It just feels right"? Sometimes words are not enough to explain why a specific action in a video game feels so satisfying and responsive. Sometimes, in order to understand it, you have to pick up a controller and play it for yourself. God of War's combat system is such a case. It's the first time since Dark Souls that I've been so invested in a combat system. Because God of War's combat is so incredibly satisfying and addictive, I'm seriously concerned it ruined many games for me. The same thing happened when I discovered Dark Souls' combat system for me. Every combat system that wasn't Dark Souls disappointed me. So many little details feel just right. Finishing an enemy with the Leviathan axe is comparable to a glory kill in Doom or a visceral attack in Bloodborne. When you can repeat an action thousands of times and it still feels satisfying and rewarding, you know you are dealing with good game design. Finishing enemies feels incredible every single time. Calling back your axe and feeling the rumble of the controller feels incredible every single time. Successfully blocking an incoming attack feels incredible every single time. Charging up a heavy attack and plunging it into an enemy feels incredible every single time. Using your rune attacks feels incredible every single time. Beating the living crap out of enemies in Spartan Rage is fucking glorious every single time. Even after playing the game for dozens of hours, I still discovered new ways to combine my attacks and line up successful combos. God of War's combat is far more tactile and methodical this time around. I guess it reaches far deeper than many of us expected. In addition, this game features the best superhero video game fight of all time. I started the game on the second hardest difficulty called Give Me a Challenge, and I got my ass kicked. It's so refreshing to play a game which remains challenging and complex in its combat even on normal difficulty. Many enemies remain dangerous opponents throughout the entire game. No matter how much you upgrade your equipment or level up your stats, enemies like the Valkyries never turn into target practice. God of War's combat system just feels right. Based on previously released gameplay and trailer footage, it was really difficult to get a grasp of the game's scale and level structure. What it ultimately ended up being is a bizarre mix of Demon's Souls, Tomb Raider and Metroidvania. Sounds super weird, but it works perfectly. It's definitely not a linear game, but it's not an open world game either, it's something in between. Once the game opens up and allows you to travel between realms, I was reminded of the Archstones in Demon's Souls. Each area is unique and visually extremely different from the one before. The level design on each individual map is comparable to the wide linear structure with some branching pathways we know from the Tomb Raider reboots. And whenever you acquire new abilities or the water level of the Lake of Nine drops, you are encouraged to backtrack to older areas akin to Metroidvania games. Because God of War isn't an open world experience, each and every side activity usually feels rewarding and tells an interesting story. It's the sum of God of War's parts which make for one of the most addictive gameplay loops in recent years. Much like in Dark Souls, I had the feeling that mysteries are lurking behind every corner, and I was overcome by a strong sense of discovery. When all is said and done, you look back on a game years or even a decade later. What ultimately remains is a list of unforgettable moments. Moments that still resonate with you because they stand for powerful emotions. It's arriving in Mexico for the first time in Red Dead Redemption. It's the opening sequence in The Last of Us, or discovering Anor Londo in Dark Souls. At the end of the day, how many magic moments I connect with a game determines how valuable the game ends up being for me. God of War is a goldmine of magic moments for me. From obvious highlights like the return of the Blades of Chaos, the first fight against Baldur, killing the dragon, or the first meeting with the World Serpent, to quiet and intimate moments like the hunting scene, the adorable father and son moment in Tyr's temple, or entering the light of Alfheim and hearing the heartbreaking inner life of his son. God of War is a game I won't forget. What remains is a collection of great memories. That's what distinguishes a good game from a brilliant game. What do you need more? It pains me to end this video because there are so many fantastic aspects I haven't even mentioned. How about Bear McCreary's phenomenal soundtrack, or the fact that God of War just proved people like Phil Spencer and EA wrong in terms of the financial success and demand for single-player games? And what about the future of the franchise? Are we going to visit ancient Egypt or Japan in future God of War titles? Is Kratos prepared to smash Thor's brains in with his own hammer? So many questions still remain. Let me end this video by saying Santa Monica has created one of the best games of all time. A game that should be a role model for the entire game industry. The game almost appears like a time traveler. God of War comes from a time where a game had to be finished and polished to the core. Unfortunately, a game like God of War that offers one cohesive experience without nasty tricks like microtransactions has become a rarity these days. God of War's bold new take on the franchise paid off. This game reminded me of what an exciting and beautiful art form video games are. Director Cory Barlog and his team have every reason to be proud of this masterfully told story. Sony Santa Monica has proven, once and for all, that it belongs to the top tier of developers, always ready to surprise us with a groundbreaking title that makes us feel like a kid again. At least that's how I felt. Thank you, Santa Monica. Thank you so much for showing everyone how it's done.